Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Can you
Tim.
hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, awesome. Uh, let's give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join. And I really appreciate if you could put your microphone on mute and possibly turn off the video so everyone can use the same quality of webinar. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's give it a couple of minutes and then we'll start. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We're very excited to start this series of webinar with you. And as you know, we have promised that we will deploy our resources towards your success so you could be in a better position when it comes to getting your permanent residency through Canada Starter Visa program. And this is going to be the first webinar in series of topics that we've selected that we identified would be very useful and helps you a lot to actually secure your success in a startup program. So before I invite Ruzbeh to get us started with this webinar, I would like to explain the structure that we have designed for today's meeting. So at the beginning, I would like to basically invite Ruzbeh to share about the startup fundraising process, which is one of the strongest indicators of a success of a startup when it comes to check marks that IRCC and other entities have to verify and validate your idea. And then after that, we will have a short Q&A, and then I will start explaining about the post letter of support activities that a lot of you have been asking for, and you've been waiting for us to share the details with you. And next week, we're planning to have a more detailed version and a dive deep on the program that we have about post letter of support. And yeah, so a lot is coming for weeks to come. And with that said, let me invite Ruzbeh. He's an attorney and very experienced expert in basically advising startups when it comes to raising funds, the qualification, every KPI that they have, and what it takes for a startup to be able to raise fund and actually move to the next step, especially in North America. Ruzbeh, thank you so much for joining, and let's get it started.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, and to be consistent with in compliance in California law, I have to disclose that the information provided today is not a legal advice and does not transpire into a legal representation or attorney-client relationship. Additionally, the information that I plan to provide today are informational only and do not represent the opinion of my firm, Stratling, Gawker, Carlson, and Ralph. That being said, yes, my name is Ruzbeh Soleimani. I am a corporate attorney, and when I think about attorneys, we always think about like movies and courts and fighting and litigation and courtrooms. But I have never set a foot a step in the courtroom, and my practice is predominantly representing startups and middle market companies, from forming them literally from the startup stage until they do an exit, when they get a financing round or sell their business or go public. And I was not born in 1975, but my firm started in 1975 and has been practicing predominantly on the West Coast of the United States. And I'm located in Newport Beach, California. And so let's start with explaining the basics of financing and fundraising for your business. So I suspect that many of us here are business owners and have an idea and have gone through an idea and came up with a platform, came up with a product, and have started engaging in transactions with consumers throughout North America or generally anywhere in the world. And so naturally, for any business at any point, you will get to a stage where you need money to fund your operations, to go forward, and to get to a step that would help you expand your platform and hire more people and do a lot of other things that would execute on your vision. And so at that point, the company would need to go and either bootstrap, meaning, and that's a technical jargon in this industry, where you basically fund yourself, you sell your product, you invest your money in the company, and don't go and talk to an outside investor and a fund, and that's a bootstrap. But let's say for the majority of the businesses out there, you need an investor in your idea to get the product to the next stage and to be able to execute on your vision. So that's when you go out and talk to independent third-party investors. And so before we do that, there are a couple of considerations that you have to think about as you go out and talk to people. So let's say I own a business, and tomorrow I decide to talk to an investor, a potential third-party investor. When I go and talk to any person, I have to be careful about what I say, what I represent, what I tell them about my company, and what kind of information I provide to them. And so the purpose of today's presentation is to lay out how you successfully go through a financing round to raise money for your company, and to make sure that you stay out of some of these legal pitfalls, if you will, to make sure you don't run into any problems. So I will go through some of the pitfalls that we've seen in our practice for many years and discuss some of them with you. So let's say you have a business, and the first thing that you need to know before you talk to an investor is that who owns that piece of business. And that can be a very simple task of exactly knowing who owns your company. And bear with me for a second. So let's say you start your company and you're the 100% owner of your company, or you have founders and you divide the percentage equally. But at some point you bring an employee, you hire an employee, you hire a partner, and promise them orally or through writing that you will give them a piece of your business. And if you do not do that correctly, and if you don't have the right structure to have a written, executed documentation of that process, potentially later down the road, when you're talking to investors, you would run into several problems. So let's say you hire John for a period of 10 days to do some projects for your company, and you promise them that you will give them 2% of your company, but you don't necessarily do it in writing, you don't know how to do it, and you haven't talked to an attorney before. And later down the road, you don't talk to John leaves, and you go and talk to an investor, and the investor says, okay, tell me who owns your company. You potentially might have a claim by John, which will come in and either delay your deal or kill your deal or cause a lot of headaches for you. So the takeaway from the first point is that know who owns your company. You have to make sure that you do everything right. You have all the identifications right. You have everything on your capitalization table, which is a ledger that shows who owns the company correctly at the outset. So that's the takeaway number one. Know who owns your company. Number two is that, well, what I've seen and what we have seen in the past and when in a lot of our startup businesses is that startups have needs to hire several employees because at the outset you don't necessarily have cash and you don't necessarily have the money to engage in hiring. And what you do is to go out and give percentages or offer percentages of your company in exchange for services of several employees or independent contractors. But you got to be very careful there because if you don't do it correctly, you would have, let's say, going back to that example, John, you go and hire John for 10 days and you don't know how to compensate them. So you essentially tell them, okay, I'm going to give you a percentage of my company, but then you would give 2%, let's say, to John, and you don't tell them that, okay, if what happens if you leave my company before you have done your services, your obligation to John will remain even though he does not provide services to you. So let me rephrase that. You got to make sure that you compensate your employees correctly, even if you give them percentages or options in your company, such that they do not leave your company and you're left with an owner in your company without having the rights and benefits given to the company. So the takeaway number two is that you got to make sure that you're compensating your employees correctly. And when you do that, you have to abide by certain laws, especially in North America. Number three, you have to make sure that you know the status of your employees. That's like one of the biggest things that delays financings, investments into companies, and potentially kills a deal. When you are talking to any investors, the first question that they will ask, how many employees do you have? The question of how many employees do you have is a technical one because you have to know at any given time the person who works for you, are they an employee or are they called something like called an independent contractor, which is not an employee, which is someone that you hire for a short period, but that you don't necessarily control their behavior or control their operations or actions, but they later on can come and claim something that will either significantly delay your deal or kill your deal. So the third takeaway for you is that you have to know the status of your employees, make sure you compensate them correctly, make sure you legally have hired them. There's no problems with their background, their status, and you have done everything in compliance with the laws of the country and the state that you're operating in. So that's the third point. Number four is IP, intellectual property. Today, we are dealing with a lot of startup companies in the tech domain who have softwares, who provide platforms, who provide SaaS, and many of these companies down the road essentially hire people from other companies or in the marketplace or in different capacities. For example, a chief technology officer or technologist or product developer. And you have to be very careful as a company owner and as a startup founder not to find yourself in a situation where the person that you hired, let's say an engineer or the CTO or any of your employees, to come and claim against your intellectual property, against your trademark, against your product, against your software. And so there's a process that you have to run through before you hire someone to make sure that they don't have an independent patent before they come into your company, an independent intellectual property, and that they will have given all the rights to anything that they develop when they work for you to your company. And if you don't do that, unfortunately, there have been many cases where a deal has been completed or a deal is about to be complete, and the buyer or the investor finds out that there is a claim on an intellectual property the ownership of the product, and the proceeds of the product. And that will result in a significant amount of penalty for the founders, for the company, and it will, again, delay and significantly harm a deal. And the last thing that I want to talk about before I get into the nitty-gritty process of raising money is valuation. You have to know what amount of money you need to get your company to the next stage in your operation before you go and talk to these investors. So many times we've seen companies going and asking for X amount of dollars, let's say like $3 million, without knowing why they want to use it, how they want to use it. And later on coming back and running into problems with the investors. And that potentially leads into litigation and results that you are not excited about, you want to get excited about. So these were the 5 things that I wanted to talk about in terms of the legal pitfalls to avoid as you go out and talk to any investors, any third party. And before I get into the pricing and to the mechanics of raising money, I also need to tell you that you should be very careful in terms of who you talk to and how you talk to them. It's very common for a lot of people, especially in the tech industry, to go and talk to a lot of investors without having the proper procedure, without having a non-disclosure statement or a confidential agreement where you can confidently talk to them but not be afraid of them using your product or your knowledge. So that's one thing. Number 2, who you talk to is very important too. There are several laws, especially in the United States, where control in terms of who you can talk to when you're out there raising money. And you have to be very careful, because if you talk to an unsophisticated person, and that has requirements under the law, it's called an accredited investor, essentially someone who is wealthy enough to be able to fend for themselves. If you talk to someone who is not sophisticated and who is a family member, who is a friend, and you give them an information that is not correct, you can potentially run into a lot of trouble and run into a lot of problems. And so you have to make sure that you know who you're talking to, and not just talk to everyone and anyone who might be interested in investing in your business. So that's another thing. So now that we've talked about this, let's talk about the mechanics of raising money. Let's say tomorrow morning you get up and you're like, okay, now I need to raise money, and I know these legal pitfalls, and I've talked to an attorney, I know what to avoid, and I'm ready to go out, and okay, what's going to happen? So what happens is that you would start by meeting people, let's say friends and family who are sophisticated enough. You know a couple of friends who have done a financing round before. You talk to other founders, you talk to other startups, and you go and talk to angel investors, and these are people who are out there to give startups money for their operations. So you go and talk to these people, and what happens is that essentially they will ask you for your company information, what type of company what type of industry you're in, how much money you need, and you need to have a lot of information ready. So you need to have presentation materials ready. Sometimes people ask for a business plan. Sometimes people ask for what is called the pitch deck, which I believe Six Success will provide that for you or help you getting one for that purpose. And then you essentially share enough information without going over the top with these potential investors. And you come to the terms of, okay, we've met each other, we like each other, we want to invest, and we want to pursue this further. What happens after that is that you would get into the mechanics of a deal and start the fundraising process. And you would come into an agreement on how much to raise, how to raise it, which I will describe in a second, and what to do with the money. So to talk about how much to raise, again, it's very important for you as the company owner and the founder to know exactly how much money you want to raise. And number two, how to raise it. So let's say you have a great product, but you're at your infancy of your company and you have been practicing for like 1, 2, 3, 4 years, but still haven't had a meaningful sale, haven't had a meaningful revenue, and don't have the numbers to show an investor. But you find an investor that is willing to engage with you and put their money in your business. At that point, you can do two things. You can agree on what it's called a price round or an unpriced round. A price round of financing is where you essentially say, okay, my company's worth $2 million. John, the investor, come and invest at 50%. That would be $1 million. And you set up the contracts, and then you go through and you get the money. But let's say John, as I said before, is not sure about your product, is not sure about your revenue, but they still really like you and they still really like the business, and they want to be with you, and they don't want to take that much risk at this point, and they want to put their money with you later on. What we have will be an unpriced round, meaning someone will give you a money and will tell you, okay, I will give this money to you in terms, as opposed to an equity in your company, meaning an ownership in your company. I will get a convertible note, I will get a debt from you, and they will get a note from the company, and they will participate in the next round. What that means is that John will give you $1 million today, and we'll agree on two things. We'll say, next year, I will give you 12 months to raise money. Once you do that, I will need X% discount. So let's say the next investor will come in and say, okay, I will give you $2 million. John will be entitled to get 20%, 30%, 40% discount to that second investor and participate in the next round. Second, they will ask for a modest interest rate. What typically happens in this industry is between 4 to 6%, and people come in and give their money and ask for a convertible note. So to recap what I've said before, or so far, we have pitfalls to avoid. So make sure you avoid the 5 points that I described before you talk to a potential investor or an accredited investor. And these are: know who owns your company. That means who owns the piece of your company, how much percentage does each person in your company own your company. Number two is that you got to make sure that you compensate your employees correctly, so you don't have to deal with issues with employees later on, and your employees are motivated to work for you. And the worst case scenario is that you have an employee that you've hired and you've given a percentage of your company, but they're not motivated for you to work anymore, and you're stuck with this employee for the rest of the company until they exit or sell their interest. Number three, make sure you know the status of your employees. Make sure that you verify the employment laws in the state and the country that you're operating in. Number five, intellectual property. It is very important to know that the company owns the intellectual property that the company has developed, and that no one else is going to say, okay, your product belongs to me, or my software, that's my software, that's not the company's software. You want to avoid that situation and get around it. And last one is valuation. Make sure you know how much money you need to raise to get to the next round of financing as you go and talk to these investors. And then we talked about the price rounds versus unpriced rounds. And price rounds is where the investor and you decide on the value of your company. The investor will give you money in exchange for ownership in the company in terms of percentage. Unpriced round is an investor and the founder are not sure about how much money, how much value, how much the company is value and worth today. And they will say, okay, instead of doing a price round, I will give my money to you as debt against the company, and I will participate in 12, 18, 20 months from now in the next round once you find another investor. And so these are the basic mechanics of the financing rounds, and I will open up to questions in a second so we can make it a conversational and informational session. And so it's important to deal with a couple of things before you also engage in a process to raise money. You need a lawyer, you need an accountant, and you sometimes need a banker to help you with identifying the value of your company. And the most important is a lawyer, because a couple of things. Down the road, in a couple of years, if you decide to raise more money for your company or sell your company and do an exit, which is the ultimate goal for almost all startup founders, is that you will deal with these investors either as partners. If they give you their money and invest it in your company, they will become your partners. Or if you sell it to them, they will become your buyer, and sometimes they will ask you to stay on and become their employees. So there will be your employers. So even if you are their employees or their partners, it's very important to talk to the right lawyer at the start, so that you engage in the right negotiation with these people that you're going to spend the rest of your life of the company with, and not get into troubled relationship with them, and negotiate and get the best terms for you and the company. Because whatever you do at the start, in the infancy years of your company, will keep with you down the road. And it's very important for you to have the right person on your side to negotiate for you and doesn't run into problems with these investors. If, for example, you hire the wrong attorney who doesn't know what to negotiate for and what to ask for, they will potentially run into a problem with the investors, do something that will make them upset, do something that will make them angry, and it will sour the relationship. And then down the road, you would have a problem with your potential partner or employee. So it's really important for you to keep that relationship in good terms. I want to open up this opportunity for questions, and please let me know and we can take it from here.
Thank you very much, Ruzbajan. I found it very useful. I have a couple of questions, and after that, I'll let others also chime in. So, do startups need to have sales before being able to raise fund?
That's a good question. No, not really. So let's say you have a product that it's great, and I think there's a lot of potentials, and I'm an investor and I like your company and I like what you're offering, and I say, okay, I'll give you X amount of dollars or I'll invest in you. So it's by what you like to do and like how you come to terms with. It's I like you, I want to invest in you, and I go about that.
Okay, so
the answer to that question is no, you don't need to have sales.
Awesome. And a lot of our startups actually are registered in Canada. And I was wondering how you could help us, like, what is the process if you have like a couple of startups or a large number of startups that we wanted to vet first to make sure that they, qualify for funding rounds, and what is the process, how you can help us?
Sure. So I have a couple of clients in Canada who are going through financing rounds right now. And so I'm in the United States. We work with a lot of 90% of my practice is with American companies,
Right.
and VCs in California, Silicon Valley, and throughout the United States. From what I have seen, and these are just the pointers, the amount of money that you can raise and the valuation of your company is much higher if you raise it in the US versus in Canada. But that being said, it is natural that if you're operating in Canada, that you would talk to VCs in Canada and investors in Canada, but you got to be knowing what you want to do. Many companies that start in Canada naturally end up working in the United States, selling their products in the United States. And so if you even think that you want to do any business in the US, eventually, it's a good process to think about raising money in the US. But to answer your question, how to raise money, how to vet your companies in Canada, you basically need to have a counsel to make sure that the company has done the proper filing, so the incorporation is correct, that they are operating consistent with the state they're in or the province that they're operating out of in Canada. And essentially, what they have been doing has been legal and in good standing with the laws of that. So, and then you need local counsel for local lawyers for that process. So, if you're in Vancouver, I would start with a Vancouver lawyer, unless you want to come to the United States. Or if you're in Toronto, I would start with a local lawyer in Toronto and then start with making sure that you have everything that you need within those systems and those are correct, and then branch out either in Canada or when you come into the United States. There are several other things that we can do.
Awesome. And basically, there is no limitation for Canadian startups to come and raise fund through us in United States, because of course the potential of raising funds, the quality, the amount, everything would be multiple when they target United States versus Canada. But so that's good news that there is no limitation.
There's no limitation.
Okay, so we can help them that way as well.
Right.
And do you have like a questionnaire, like a template or something that we can fill out for our portfolio of startups, and then you could kind of start a process and help us navigate that path?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to share that with you. Yes, I do have a questionnaire. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So that would be end of my questions. Team, please feel free to chime in if you have any particular question. Now it's the time. Don't be shy. Yes, Mr. Vinod.
Yeah, hi, Rusbeh. I have one question. You talk about fundraising through equity market, fundraising through the debt market. There's another mode of the fundraising which is through the convertibles. So if you can please let us know that is there an option of doing the convertibles over there, and how good this would be an option for a startup to raise some debt through the convertible route and look forward to get it converted into the equity. If you can throw some light on that.
Sure, absolutely. So the question is, if the startup can raise money through convertible note debt, which would result in a later price round. So yes, that would be an unpriced round. Let's say you are the investor, I'm the founder, and we talk and you say, I don't want to invest in your company presently to get an equity, but I want to give you $1 million, let's say, and I want 6% interest rate over a year, with the expectation that you will in 12 months or 18 months or 24 months meet another investor and have another investor, and they will invest in your company. And so I would say, okay, so what is the benefit for you besides being a debt holder of my company and getting 6% interest? And you will say, okay, my expectation is in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months that we agreed, you will give me 20% discount for the next price round where the other investor comes in. So let's say like in 24 months, second investor comes in and says, I like your product, you're making sales, I want to give you $2 million. And now there's an opportunity for you as the investor, the original investor, to get a 20% discount at the valuation of $3 million, let's say, and put extra money in the company. So yes, so you would essentially become a debt holder of the company with the expectation that you will participate in the next financing round and putting more money in the company, but at a discounted value with an interest rate that will cover your risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. Any more questions? I know we've covered a lot, and we also, after the meeting, in a couple of days, we'll provide you with the summary of the meeting and a form so you could basically share with us your feedback. And also, if you have additional questions, you can ask there, and we will basically help you to navigate this complex area of fundraising for sure. All right. It looks like there is no more question at this point. Uh,
We have
sure.
another question from this
Yeah,
wonderful gentleman.
one more question. It's nice to know about the fundraising. If you can also throw a little bit light on the valuation side of it, that since we are the startup, how do we structure our working appropriately so that we have a fair value of idea that how much of our product is going to be valued in the market, and how do we do right sizing about it so that we are not being very conservative and we are not being very over optimistic.
Well, that's a very good question, because valuation is the bulk of the negotiations when you talk to an investor. Because I can tell you my company is worth X and someone else says no, it's Y. But so generally, that depends on the industry of your company. So let's say you are in a manufacturing industry versus you're in a tech industry versus you're in the food consumer product industry. And what you would do is that you would look at the type of product or service you're offering. So let's say, are you offering a service? Does that service cost money for the consumer? Yes. Then you would say, okay, I will look at my sales or revenue and I will multiply it by a number to get to the valuation. Let's say you have $100,000 of sales the first year, or like $50,000 of sales the next year. You would go and look in your industry and see what other companies are going for depending on revenue. And the way that you do that, later on as you raise a little bit more money, you would look at comparable companies in the public market or in the public capital markets and say, the last round of equity that they raised, how much multiple did they take, multiplied by their revenue, or EBITDA, which is a financial metric, and then that will give you a valuation. So let's say you have a product, you have a technology product, you're selling it for like $10 a month, you'll have 100 customers, you would multiply that, multiply it by year, get it to a yearly figure, and then multiply that by a factor. So like, let's say you go 5 times your revenue, 4 times your revenue. This 4 and 5 times, this multiple comes from comparing your company to similar companies in that industry that have gone through a financing round and raised money. It is a little bit difficult to begin with. That's why we have unpriced rounds, because investors are really not sure about the valuation and they want to take the risk and become a debt holder. But if I have companies that bootstrap from the start, have a successful sales record, and have revenue, and do a conservative approach, and let's say out in the market it's between 5 to 10 times, and they go with like 5 to 6 times and get the money that they want and then go through the pricing round. But if you don't have that, it's what you think that you can justify to an investor to get that money. So essentially, it's what you can justify based on the existing revenue or sales multiplied by a reasonable factor based on comparing yourself to other companies in the industry. I hope that answers the questions and it's not too long or complicated.
No, thank you very much. Thanks.
A pleasure.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right. So I think for today, that would conclude the fundraising session. Thank you, Ruzbejan.
Perfect.
And what we do is that we will collect any more questions if our teams after the meeting or anytime after today they have any questions. We will collect them and we will definitely schedule future webinars or private sessions with you as well.
Absolutely. If anyone needs to contact me, they can definitely go through you, and Success will put me in contact with you and we can chat further. And the best of luck to everyone here. And it was a pleasure meeting and attending this seminar, meeting you and providing this information. Hopefully it's helpful and you can take something away from it and go and run your business and become super successful.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so as you know, now we can get us started with the second part of the webinar. I just want to make sure that people don't leave because we have the second part of the webinar going on, and that's about post letter of support activities. And before that, I would like to share a couple of software screens with you and then announce what we're planning to do. Just give me one moment so I can share my screen. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I appreciate if you could mute your microphone. So basically, one of the things that every startup that we work with will ask us at some point is that what happens after the getting the letter of support. So we have done a lot of activities before acquiring letter of support from incubators, VCs, and angels that we work with, but it's not enough, and it's some part of the milestone that we have achieved. But again, there are other activities that a startup should basically show and demonstrate in order to secure the permanent residency. And we were among the first companies to promote the continuous development after the letter of support since day one. And the testimony to our success and our correct understanding of the situation is that we have received a lot of feedback from RRCC, whether the approved cases that we have, like Corsana, like Tech in Seoul, that's got permanent residency directly this year, and also startups that were requested to provide a peer, like they were invited to a peer review committee so they could explain their activities in more detail. And also we had a couple of lawyers and consultants who reached out to us. They were not primarily our customers, but their startups actually were peer reviewed, and they needed us to kind of help them in the navigate this this problem and situation. So one thing I would like to highlight is that based on our detailed study since 2-3 years ago, we have planned and we have mapped every single request from RRCC and peer review request that we received into a map. And as you see, it's very comprehensive, like let's say SWOT analysis, like or TRL analysis. This one by itself has a lot of components. So it's not just like this one. There are a lot of things that goes into each one of these. And obviously, it would be very overwhelming for startups to kind of deal with the whole plan at the same time. So what we decided to do and be working on is to basically summarize it into some packages that we could offer to our startups for post letter of support and help them to basically prep them for peer review and then another rounds of questions. Because one thing you need to keep in mind, and you've heard this a lot from us, that once the peer review report comes in, it's typically 14 days that you have time to respond. And these 14 days, 7 days takes for incubator to also put together this report and their side of answers and reports and evaluations. So you basically, after 1 year, 2 years of waiting and progress, you only have 5 to 7 days to prepare your report and answer all the questions. So it means that you need to plan and prepare for peer review long before that, because if you have not, and then you get a peer review or around a question, there is not enough time for any startup team to put together this question and answers for the IRCC and other entities. So with that said, let me share a document that we've prepared. All right. I hope you can see my screen now. So we will share this document with you after basically next week. We're adding a couple of more components to it, but basically we provide at Six Axis, we provide two set of services. One is called pre-LOS, means pre-letter of support, that you've all been familiar since day one. You work with us with ideation, with resume, business plan, prototype development, TRL based prototype development, website design and development, and interview that you had with the incubator or angels, as well as receiving letter of support, and the last phase, which is phase 9, the RRCC due diligence audit planning. So that's one. And now we have planned a second round of services, which is called post letter of support. So in post letter of support, based on that detailed map that I just shared with you, the IRCC map and audit, we have planned these services under 3 categories. So the category 1 would be continuous activity, meaning every activity that your startup should be doing on a continuous basis. It's not something that you leave it 1 month and then come back next month to do it. It's something that you should plan for it, and somebody should be dedicated in your startup. Let's say a CMO, chief marketing officer. They should be planning months ahead. They should be creating blogs. They should be writing social media posts constantly, because it takes time for a startup to grow followers and gain followers, and basically be able to achieve milestones that they set in planning, let's say business plan. The day one that you went to the incubator or angel investor, you promised them in a business plan that we're going to achieve this, and it takes 6 months, 1 year, and there was like a planning in that business plan. So 2 years after that event, if you're being asked by peer review committee that based on the business plan you were supposed to achieve these, it's not something that you could gain 5,000 followers overnight. So it's something that you need to plan on a daily basis, basically. So that's a set of activities that is called continuous activities. And it's just, this list is also not comprehensive. There are a lot of activities that we will share in detail later. And the other category that basically helps us be prepared for peer review and success and getting permanent residency is community. A startup community is one of the most critical services and activities that you can engage in to make sure that you are you achieve your goals when it comes to getting the permanent residency. And let me explain why. In a startup community, you can connect with other founders, with other entrepreneurs. You can ask questions from mentors. When you're stuck, you can ask questions. You know, what is the solution for this? You know, I don't know what's the next step. And there are a lot of people that are willing to help you in the community. And also, we're going to be sharing a lot of discounts, like digital credits. Let's say you want to build a cloud platform, and you need to put your credit card. But we could share with you discounts as up to $60,000 worth of discounts. So you, instead of paying your own money, you could use these credits to basically build the MVP or that product to the level, and then if it was successful, then continue paying for it if that there's need be. So also, we will share with you a lot of startup templates, business plan templates, and anything that you might need. And again, all the things that you're seeing here, they come from our review with our RCC letters review that we had, our peer review letters, their content. They've been asking for these items, and we've been adding them here. And also, we're going to have monthly review meetings, meaning that in the community that I will share with you shortly, in the community, every month we will have a session like this, and startups can, you know, present their progress, introduce themselves, you know, what they've achieved, what are the challenges, and we can engage in a discussion and help them to navigate that, and we can learn from each other. So it's a very, very interesting environment that will help us to succeed. And the last phase and challenge that we've seen RSCC been asking about is the product development. So they've been constantly asking about, all right, what is this current stage of the product? What progress did you make? What are the areas that you've achieved your milestones based on the business plan that you presented? So it's very important that as startups continue developing their the product. And as you know, the measurement that RCC actually tests these startups against is the TRL, technology readiness level. Like they check and track startup progress in these milestones, and we will help you do that. So for continuous activity and for the community, we have put together a very simplified package that I share shortly. For product development, if you need anything that requires hardware design or development, design services like UI, UX, 3D, industrial design, those kind of things, or software development, that includes AI, data science, machine learning, basically apps, mobile apps, those kind of things, you can reach out to us and we will provide you with a code. After we review your complexity, the application and its complexity, we will provide you with a code for your startup. So for the other two, we have already done that. Let me share that with you. So we have put together a post letter of supports package, RCC due diligence package. So for continuous activity, we are going to charge about $1,500 next year. But for startups that sign up by the end of the year, they will get a lifetime discount of $870 per month. And in return for that, what we do is that we help them to prepare their marketing content, let's say blogs, social media per week and per month. And we will help them to put together a very detailed go-to-market strategy and achieve that. For sales, we can help them to set up the CRM that they need. And mind you that RCC in many of the startups asked for the sales funnel, for the templates, and for the CRM progress, so they could basically track how many investors they reach, how many customers, how many contractors they work with. All of these factors that you see here actually are asked in the RCC peer review letters. So in addition to that, we will provide you with all the training needed, monthly reports. It's something that since starting 2023, it's going to be mandatory with incubators and angels that we work with, that you need to provide them on a monthly basis with a progress report, because that would RCC might ask incubators for the startup progress on a daily basis, so they should be prepared, and that's the reason. And also, you need to be prepared to update your business plan at any moment. So if you've achieved something, you just update the business plan right there. So we'll also provide you with a digital version of the business plan that it could be modified and on demand. So if you have achieved something, received the certificate, you could add it right there. Actually, we help you to do that. For the community, we're going to charge a yearly membership of $999 USD per member. So if there's 5 people in one startup, each member need to pay $1,000 basically per year. And in return to that, let me launch the community here so I can walk you through it. I think it's the right time. All right. So what you see here is the community that we're going to launch January 1st. So in this community, what we do, let me get started from here. So we have designed channels that you could introduce yourself, what you do. If you have questions, you can ask us here, and we will answer based on a daily basis with our expert matters. So we're there to help you actually navigate these challenges on a daily basis. Next, we will have a dedicated channels for peer review. If you receive peer review, if you have questions for business plan, blogs and websites, product development, so you could come here and ask your question. And we also be sharing our resources in this channel, and there are going to be a lot added in here. In addition to that, courses. So RCC specifically asked for updates and trainings and certificates for members, not per startup. Let's say if you have a chief technology officer, right? You need to be able to demonstrate why they're qualified to build this product, or how they qualified to make that decision, or develop something. So in order to do that, we have developed a specific courses per role. So first of all, we go through what is the CTO role, and then at some point, if you need to have, let's say, introduction to a specific technology topics, we help you. And we have also included some courses with certificates, free courses, paid courses with certificates that you could complete and basically add that certificate to your startup portfolio. And this is specifically for CTO role, and then we have Chief Financial Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. So we will show you exactly what you need to do, what kind of content you need to share on your social media, what kind of blogs, how to do your keyword research, those kind of things. And you will learn a lot and have access to a lot of useful resources. Again, another thing that basically is asked in RCC reviews is that they want to ask if you have set of documents, contracts ready. So for example, we have put together a list of legal documents that you see, that election forms, organizing meetings, memo of understanding. These are all legal documents that you could download and use. When it comes to pitch deck, we have prepared very professional pitch deck templates, and also a resource like 1.2 gigabyte PowerPoint template. So you could basically download and look at all the templates and use what you need. So we have gathered a lot of useful content and resources for you in here that you could benefit from community. And a lot of activities and a lot of trainings after post letter of support is only available through community. And we will be having discussions and weekly meetings on that. So that's the community part of it. And the last part is the product development that I briefly shared. If you need support in development of your product, in design of your product, whether it's hardware or software, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will help you achieve that. Thank you very much. So that would be the end of my presentation. I will open the mic for everyone. If you have any question specific to this, please do not hesitate to ask me. Now it's the time. Thank you. Yes, Miss Delia. I think you're on mute.
Yes, you can hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. My question is the IRCC are looking for the three activities, continuous activity, community, and product development, or they are looking for, they are just happy to see that the startup is going through one of them, or they are looking for all?
Yeah, so basically, let me share that again here so we can have a look. Basically, at some point, we have identified over 100 or 150, I can't recall exactly, points that RCC been asking for in different or queries that they had from startups, right? So for example, they ask on website, show us the certificate, the copyright certificate of this image that you put in on your website. So it's not that you could, get an image from the internet and put it on your website. They actually ask for exact certificate and copyright certificate of one image on one website. So in order to do that, there are a lot of factors. It's not just 3. There are a lot of factors that they've been asking for from startups. But in order to cover that, we summarize all of it into these 3 components. So continuous development, community, and product development. So if you get these services, either through us or anyone else that is familiar and exactly knows what to do with these packages, you could feel secure that, all right, we've covered a lot of it. But again, it's not just these 3. These are a like umbrella covering a lot of smaller factors, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. How frequent the IRCC are looking for the activity? I mean, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, quarterly? How frequent they are looking for that?
So IRCC does not ask for these frequently. They come after 1 year, 1.5 years and say, oh, here what we need, right? But in order to answer them, you should be doing all these activities on a daily, monthly, weekly basis, right? So again, it's not something that we can do overnight. They say, all right, show us your sales process, right? Sales process starts with marketing. So we need to have marketing in place. We need to have templates. We need to have CRM. We need to have emails ready. And then we could say, oh, we have engaged 20 sales targets, right? These companies. We have LOIs from these customers. So they've been asking around like 1.5 year, I would say, every 1 year, 1.5 year. But incubator needs update every month. And in order to do that, you need to be able to do these activities on a daily or weekly basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, also, if you don't want to ask it on a video, you could ask in the chat. So I post in the chat here. If you have any questions that you just wanted to type, you can do that and I will answer that question. For recording the session, yes, we have recorded the session and we will share that with you.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. All right. Any more questions? Now is the time. If you and if you have like any question about your own startup that we might not have covered it here, it's now time to ask that. It's a friendly environment, so there is no like stupid question or mistake or anything. We just wanted to share knowledge and learn from each other. All right, so it seems that there is no more questions. So what we do is we put together form a survey and share with you, so we know exactly how we performed. Did we answer your questions? If you have another question, you can ask that in survey too. Let us know how we did. And also we'll be sharing these documents and videos that we work and presented today with you probably next week. Thank you so much for joining and have a good rest of day and night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.